City Council meeting for Alpine, Utah. We'll start with a roll call vote, starting from Lon Lot.
Lon Lot, present.
Jessica Smuin, present.
Greg Gordon, present.
Jason Thielen, present.
Kelly Law, present.
Okay, we will have a prayer by Jason Thielen and followed by a pledge led by Greg Gordon.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for the opportunity to participate in city government. We're thankful for the freedoms we have and the liberties we enjoy. We're thankful for the leaders of our city who strive and work hard to make it a great place to work. And we're thankful for our police and fire for their sacrifice to keep us safe. Please help us tonight. Help us with understanding. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to the consent calendar. Are there any questions on the items on the consent calendar?
There is one item that I just want to clarify on this transportation master plan update. The last official update was in 2005. Since that time, I think in 2018, we updated the street plan in a few areas. The figure that's included as kind of an attachment to the proposal wasn't meant for anything other than to identify some specific areas we wanted to look at. So all those changes that were made in 2018 will be incorporated into the plan, and there's no intent to change any of that. That figure is just there for a different purpose, just to highlight a couple of roads that we feel like need to be addressed in the future. So unless there's any other questions.
Yeah, Mayor, I do have a couple questions. One, I have some minute corrections that needed to be made, but I couldn't get them sent to Bonnie. And they're minor. Can we just make that correction later?
I don't know, Brigham.
Can we?
What's the process for that?
Yeah, if you want to make a correction, is there a way for you to
Doing it right now?
recite them and then we'd
I can
approve
right
them?
now if you'd like.
Yeah.
Okay, that along with the election drop box thing, I have a question on that one. Okay. So Heidi, page 1.
If you want to make the notes on here.
Yes. If we approved them tonight, could we reapprove them later? Or could we defer that approval?
We can move through it fairly quickly if you want.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you can
Carry it
defer if
through
you
then.
want,
I think.
Okay,
but if they're, if they're quick.
but that would be possible if
Yeah,
needed,
yeah, you can
okay.
defer and next time approve multiple minutes.
Got it, thanks.
do you want to do that?
It's up to you.
Okay. Page 1, line 19, it has Nate Smart as the person coming, but throughout the time he was talking, there were other places that said Neil and Nate and Neil and Nate. So I don't know how you want to correct that one, other than it was on page, his name, it was on page 5, line 31 and line 32 and line 33. All went from Neil to Nate to Neil to Nate. And I don't know who he was now. Was he Neil or Nate?
I remember Neil.
Okay, so
Neil Smart, yeah, that's the name. And I
Okay.
believe his name is spelled N-I-E-L, Neil, not N-E-A-L.
Neal. Okay, so those would be some of those corrections. On while you're on page 5, or you on page 5 still? Line 30 down, he is going to have to remove the concert. It should be concrete. So back to page 3, line 57. Should be as Peterson Park, not at Peterson Park, known as Peterson Park. Towards the end of that sentence.
Right, after 1888, now known as Peterson
As
Park.
Peterson Park. Sorry, guys, maybe we should do this. This is
Yeah.
all, these are things yeah, there were several. Ready for page 4?
How many are there, Lon?
Well, there were 7 pages worth of.
So let's defer this and move on so
Okay.
we can make sure that we have everyone for the budget, because we have people leaving and I just want to make sure that the entire council is here as we go over the budget. Is that okay?
That's fine for me.
Okay,
I-
that'd be
I
great. So-
apologize.
No, no, no. If
It
we
just
can,
didn't, the email just didn't go through, and I guess, I don't know.
So do we not want to approve the minutes today or just approve them?
can we just defer till the next meeting for the minutes? So, when you approve the consent calendar, approve everything but item A. And then I did have a question on item H with, did anyone speak with Mr. Berkey?
No, but my guess is he knows because I talked to the plant manager about this. But I was not able to get a hold of Mr. Turkey. I will still contact him, but I'll bet he knows by now. So,
Okay,
Do we need any discussion on the sign in Gateway from anyone?
Was it what you were looking for, Greg?
Well, I thought it was good. I mean, it was simple and clear. I thought, that there's just a general review. So in that way, it didn't get into specifics, right? That might take some time, right? If we're gonna lay out, what
Yeah,
we're
get it-
worried
yeah.
about, but I mean, I thought this was got us to where we need to be, at least where there's more scrutiny in terms of the design. So without, going through a whole lot of effort on design specifics. But
any other questions regarding the consent calendar?
The voting thing, in that contract, it talks about us having cameras.
Mhm.
Do we have cameras?
So what happened this year, it was kind of a quick turnaround. A lot of cities have a security system. All they had to do was add one, like a camera to it. We didn't have anything. So, and getting materials was tough this year. So we do have a camera there now. I don't know if it's hooked up yet, but because we're in a different situation than some cities, the county actually brought a trail camera out.
So we're covered on that.
So it's covered for now, yeah.
yeah,
And then-
you don't see it unless you look.
Yeah, we'll have this permanent solution in place soon if it's not operating already.
Okay,
So,
All right.
yeah.
so I'll make a motion then, Mayor, that we approve the consent calendar without the minutes to defer them to next meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. We'll vote, we'll do a roll call vote, starting from Lon Lot.
Lon Lot, aye.
Jessica Smew and I.
Greg Gordon, aye.
Jason Thielen, yes.
Kelly Law, yes.
Okay. We'll move on to the next portion of our meeting, which is public comment. And as I have not received anything or see anybody, I'm assuming we will not have public comment tonight. Shane, do we have anything for reports and presentations?
No.
Okay, so we'll move right into the action items. We'll open a public hearing for the 2023 year budget. And again, as there is no public here to comment, do we have to make a motion to close the public hearing or can we just close it?
Can close it.
Okay.
What, if we had public here, I have a PowerPoint that if the council probably should see it.
Okay, during the
So,
public,
Austin, I just emailed that to you, actually. They're all down the high. So we've been working on this budget. I don't know, for whatever reason, it seems like we've been working on it for about a year, but it's only been a few months. So I think we got a good budget put together. It's balanced, subject to proposed property tax increase that we'll discuss tonight. That come through, Austin? No, did I? Was it just like 5 minutes ago? You connected to the internet? Maybe I'm not. Try it again. William, do you have it on? Yep. Actually, maybe I can just plug in with my computer up here. Should we do that? Or, well, I have the other kind of USB. I have the little one. So let's see, we'll just plug this computer in. Oh yeah, we can do it right here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. All right, so we'll just briefly go over a few things here, some budget highlights. Notice of proposed property tax increase, talk about our revenues a little bit, place safety district budget changes and costs, and then some property tax comparisons. And William put this together for us. He's done a great job working on it, and you'll actually be able to hear from him a little later on another one of our items. So the budget highlights, this budget addresses wage adjustments due to inflation and some recruitment and retention for the Public Safety District, Police and Fire. Increased costs for projects. We had an 8.7% COLA with our garbage contractor, and then capital projects. Some of the capital projects that are included in this budget are new pickleball courts, fire station addition and remodel, the Grove Drive crossing and realignment up kind of near Alpine Cove and Box Elder, the Grove Drive Bonneville Shoreline Trail, which we have a 50% matching grant for that project. The Poppy Restoration project, again, we have a 50% match for that one. Some PI system improvements and water system improvements. Funding sources, our sales tax just keeps getting better, and that's how we've been able to really survive with minimal property tax increases. It's really started to go up here the last 4 years that are shown on this graph. As of this month, year over year, we're up 13.45%. There's 2 more months that will go into this. So we really won't know where we're at for this current budget year until August, about August 20th, when we get that allocation. Property tax, this graph shows our property tax revenue is the shaded area, and then the yellow line is our property tax rate. So as
It just moved through.
What's going on?
Something.
Oh, here we go.
what is going on? I'm not touching anything.
Yeah, yours is not.
Oh, so you're having to advance that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you when to hit the next slide then. It's like, I'm not touching anything. Yeah. So we get a little bit of new growth, additional property tax revenue for new growth, and there is a lag in that as well. Without a property tax increase this year, we would have received an additional almost 45,000 is all. And looking at the inflation and costs and everything, it doesn't go very far. So property tax remains flat. The rate, as property values go up, the rate goes down unless you have a property tax increase. So you get the same revenue year after year, plus a little component for new growth. So as part of this budget, we're making a recommendation to increase property taxes for some additional revenue. The proposal that is included in the budget that's in your packet is to hold the rate from last year, which is 0.001306. That additional revenue would be about 730,000. How would this money be spent? About 267,000 of that would go to fund the increase that we saw from the Public Safety District. We've discussed making use of a sales tax bond for the fire station remodel, and we'll have a good chunk of change to put down on that, but we'll have to bond for some. But we would use some of this to replace an estimated $250,000 of sales tax revenue that needs to be set aside for that fire station bond. And then funding for larger city projects like the Grove Drive crossing and realignment, water system improvements, and we would bump up our street maintenance as well. It's costing more, but we would still do more than we're currently doing. So how would the property tax increase be noticed? We have, our budget hearing tonight, which was noticed according to state law. Assuming a tax increase, the council would need to set a public hearing tonight for August 23rd. I have talked to Utah County. Can't think of his name right now, but you can't have your truth and taxation hearing at the same time as another entity. And that this night, August 23rd, is open. So we would be able to do that.
Can you say another entity, just mean another municipality?
It's trying to think the wording he used, Hiram from state law. It might be just adjacent entities. The one he mentioned is Central Utah Water Conservancy District has a hearing, but it's the night before.
Okay.
So he said August 23rd, which is our normal council meeting, would be fine.
Okay.
There's not supposed to be anything else on that agenda for the meeting. I talked with Craig and we talked about maybe having two agendas, one for a 6 o'clock hearing, and then have our regular city council meeting start on a second agenda after that.
Because that would be our only meeting that month.
Yeah, that's what we did in 2019, I believe. And then we get information out via our website. Those that have signed up for the mayor's email, utility bills, a note on there, and the newsline. Then it would be advertised according to state law in the paper, and the county prepares all of that, so the wording's all correct and all the proper information is put out there. Next slide, Austin. Okay, public safety district budget changes, both police and fire, focus was on officer recruitment and retention. And increasing starting wages to attract employees. There's a little bit of vehicle replacement in the police, and then in fire, the proposal that was approved was to convert a part-time position to a full-time position, which there is a little bit of a cost there, but it's made up on the revenue side by allowing them to take care of more calls and especially in the ambulance. Okay, next slide. So the public safety district costs for our portion, police was up just over 34%, fire 36, or no, that's the portion of the total that we pay, right, William? That's actually the portion of the total. So about a third. The formulas are slightly different. That's why the numbers are different. So there's the numbers increases for each of the three administration, police and fire. Overall increase is just under 267,000. And about 66% of our increase is for police, 33% fire. Next slide. This chart and table shows countywide where property taxes go. So a big chunk, almost 71%, goes to the school districts. Cities are next. Yeah, they're next in line at about 13.66%. Next slide.
And sorry, Shane,
Yeah.
that's reflective of an increase or that's present?
This is 2021.
Got it.
That particular slide. Okay, so the next slide, in 2021, this is where for Alpine City, where a taxpayer's dollars went. 13.56% of that went to the city. Next slide. For 2022, as proposed, holding the rate from last year, that would bump up to 15.87% would come to Alpine City. Next slide. This graph shows our property tax revenue, sales tax revenue, and then the combined tax revenue versus our cost for police. So a big chunk of those two funds is taken up in our public safety costs, which we're no different than anyone else. You know, that's common. Next slide. Revenue needed, it's actually calculated based on holding the rate at 730,000. The proposed tax rate would be the 0.001306. This would be just under a 37% increase for the city's portion of property tax. What that equates to is $1.61 per month increase per $100,000 of residential market value. And that's it'll be slightly different. That's as close as we can calculate it. When the county information comes out, they'll have it right down because they'll do a residential and a commercial. We don't have the ability to calculate that commercial. So this is close, right? So the mean home in Alpine for 2022 value is just over $1 million, up from 730,000 for last year. So it would be a $16.39 a month increase for that mean home. The median is 868,000. So for that home, it'd be just over a $14 a month increase. Next slide. This compares the best we've tried to gather who's doing a tax increase and what their proposal is, and who knows where their council will end up if, you know, they could be meeting tonight like we are. But this compares us to others. The one that we haven't been able to get, we've asked 2 or 3 times and they haven't recalculated it based on what their council did last week, was Highland City. We tried to get kind of a, what their rate would be if their public safety district fees and other fees were included. This does not reflect that, so it will be higher once we get that number.
Right, and it's a little, Highland's a little bit anomalous, Highland and Pleasant Grove both, because they have fees that we don't. Ours are rolled into our tax rate.
Yeah,
So Highland, even though their tax rate is low, they charge a safety fee, they charge a road fee.
there's
Is that I thought they
a
had one
parks or a,
trails or something.
what do they call it,
Yeah.
open space fee?
So they have at least three fees that they've tacked on, but it's not considered a tax because it's a fee.
Yeah.
But it's still a monthly payment that the residents have to make. So that's a little, you just have to kind of look at that, and that's not truly representative. When I talked to Kurt, he's like, you know what, we would probably be above, our rates would be very, very similar if you added all those on. That's what he had calculated it to
And they
be.
could be a year away or less from having to change that because of some things that are going on in the courts with fees. And they're totally aware of that, so.
Additionally, as I looked at several of these cities, they have a base tax rate, then they have, some of them have a sewer tax, a cemetery tax, and
Yep.
water district taxes. Where in Alpine, it's all in, right? All of that
That's
is
correct.
included in our one tax rate, but several cities have additional
Yeah.
different tax rates.
And we tried to include that as a composite, right? So this should show the best information we had from the state tax commission for that composite rate. Okay, next slide. So this graph shows total property tax rate comparison, and then the city only is the shorter, the green bar, and white in Alpine's case. So you can see how we would stack up to the other cities. Next slide, and I'll send this out to everyone. We just finished it not very long ago, right? So again, what does funding the tax increase provide for the residents? Maintain the level of service and public safety, keep the good employees that other districts are trying to lure away. Continue funding for capital projects not funded by enterprise funds, like our cemetery expansion. Continue to improve city streets, the fire station, and improvements to our water system. And that's the end of the presentation. A couple of things on the budget that was included in the packet. There are a few adjustments that have been made since the tentative budget was approved. And that's because we heard back on some grants. The 3 ARPA grants that we applied to Utah County for, we were not successful on any of those. They chose some large projects kind of scattered throughout the county. Their explanation was that these projects will benefit everyone, even if your specific city didn't get funded. So I increased based on some bids and stuff we received on this first round of the cemetery improvements, I increased that by, I think, 50,000. We had applied for this grant from the county to install smart water controllers on our parks. Again, we weren't successful. So we thought we'd start chipping away at that. So we put 100,000 in. I was thinking probably like Creekside and Burgess first, and then start working our way through the others. We actually applied for another grant. We were hoping, we kind of hedged that we would get something from the county because they asked us could you pare a project down or whatever. So we had a grant opportunity that was limited on the amount. So we took kind of our bottom end parks from what we applied to the county for applied for a grant for those, hoping we would get the top 2/3 of them, and we didn't get any. So we put some money in to help start that. We actually have that system installed on Legacy over here, and so far it's working really well for us. So Cal's happy with it. And then again, because we didn't get the grant award from the county, we rolled the Grove Drive project into the budget as a capital project and showed how we could fund that. So that was estimated at 1.4 million. So it's a big project for us. And then just some other minor little tweaks, like equipment costs went up a little bit from the bids that were approved in the last 2 council meetings. And so we adjusted those up a little bit. Other than that, everything is the same that it was in the tentative budget. So.
Any questions for Shane?
I will say on the tax increase, and I know some of the council members and the mayor have talked to me about this. There's been, quite a few residents that have approached different city officials or staff and said, hey, you can raise our property taxes just if you can do more. If you come and pay my street, go ahead and raise my taxes, but please come and pay my street, and different comments like that. Related to street maintenance, the council approved a study that will hopefully begin in August when the Utah State students get back in school, that will go through and do an inventory of every sidewalk, sign, and street in the city. And out of that, we should be able to come up with a little more of a maybe 5-year maintenance plan or something like that, we can use as kind of a guide as we go through our future budgets and street maintenance plans. So.
And I think also, so it's kind of confusing, right? I think the reason that we're taking this step is, number one, obviously we have to take into consideration the safety district. And number two, we're just holding the rate steady. It's the same rate. Our tax rate, it does not account for inflation. As you can tell, you've got our garbage collection, they're charging us an 8.7% COLA. And do you know what I mean? And I feel like, I've told Shane this over and over again as I meet with people. It's like they want the city to do more, and our response is we don't have the funds, which is kind of surprising, I think, to a lot of people. I don't think they realize how lean and mean we run the city. I met with the mayor of Lehigh today, and we were talking about different things. And I said, Mayor, we have like 15 full-time employees, and then, part-time and seasonal workers. That's how we run the entire city. He's like, are you kidding me? He had no idea. It's great that we've been able to do this, but I think our residents, and as we grow, they want more from the city and expect more from the city. I don't think we're being extravagant in what we're doing. I think a lot of it is just to keep up with the rising costs. And then as far as being able to help the people on fixed income, there is a path through the county that we can help them set up. So the people that are on fixed incomes, it should not affect them.
And the state, right, has also a provision for, that's new from last year.
So.
Really, it's our increased sales tax is what's been helping us along without having regular tax increases.
I think that's helped a lot of cities. In fact, a lot of the mayors are saying, their number one revenue has been either like Costco or a car dealership or, whatever it was. But they said, increasingly more and more cities, it's their online sales tax revenue that's helping.
Few weeks ago, William and I were on a conference call or a Zoom call with a staff member at Saratoga Springs, and they did a 9% increase across the board for city employees, plus other, I think they had 2 increases in police, if I remember right. substantial ones, and then fire as well. And I said, so are you raising your property taxes to take care of this? And he says, no, our sales tax has been so good to us, it's covering all of that. So,
Yeah, I mean,
but we're not the commercial mecca that,
no,
they have started out there.
but even American Fork, who does have a very large commercial district, they're having to raise their taxes, and their mayor said it's gonna be about $100 a month. Or I think he said $10 a month, so about $120 a year. Sorry, got that mixed up.
Mhm.
You know, and obviously we don't have the commercial base that they do.
Yeah.
So with that, do we close the public meeting and then we move on the amendment on the ordinance? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so with no further discussion, I'll close the public meeting. Public hearing, sorry. Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve the budget.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-24 for the fiscal year 2023 final budget and schedule a public hearing for the proposed property tax increase.
Is there a second?
For August 23rd, right?
For August
6 p.m.
At 6 p.m.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. There's
Kelly
been
Law, second.
a motion by Jason Thielen, second by Kelly Law. Any discussion or questions?
He said 20, he said 24, is it 25?
No, that's it.
The other one.
That's the next one.
Okay,
That's the new
okay.
budget.
That's the amended.
Okay,
It's not in our packet.
Yeah,
Okay.
the budget was a separate,
24.
separate deal.
Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Lott.
Yes.
Jessica Smewen, yes.
Greg Gordon, yes.
Jason Thielen, yes.
Kelly Law, yes.
Was he a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to item C. Okay, I will now open a public hearing for the 2022 amended budget.
What we should do, Mayor, if I can just interrupt, I'll just present this real quick, then you could open the. We have one person. Open the public hearing and then take
Oh,
it from
okay.
there. So,
Okay.
so I sent the exhibit A out Friday, not knowing that the other things weren't in the packet. When I realized that today, I sent the cover sheet and the resolution or the ordinance out as well. So there's just a few little budget adjustments for this year to make sure that we don't have an overrun. So in our general fund for the treasurer department, there's just a slight increase for wages and benefits by $1,150 total. That would just come from fund balance. Same in the building inspection. It's about $2,450 plus. With all the building and everything, we've experienced a little more cost for our contract building inspector, so we're upping that about $10,000. In the streets, some project costs were higher and equipment costs, so that's about $42,750. In the garbage department, again, that would come from fund balance. In the garbage department, slight increase for wages and benefits. Then we added our cleanup projects that we really didn't have any history to know what they were going to cost. So there's an adjustment in there. We have built that into the new budget. So about $13,400 coming from fund balance. Class C roads, again, a little increase for project costs of $50,000. And then the state legislature changed. So our general fund, we need to be under 35% of our general fund budget as far as what can stay in the general fund, kind of your rainy day fund. It went from 25 to 35%. So we need to transfer 1.3 million to our capital improvement fund. And it sounds like a lot, and it is, but about half of that is ARPA funds. And then, so roughly 600,000, we've been able to transfer about that much each year. And that's how we fund things like our new pickleball courts and projects like that don't have a funding source like a enterprise fund. So
Shane, is that 35% limit apply to all budget accounts besides enterprise funds?
it's only the general fund.
Okay, well, and capital improvement fund or not?
So
That's what we're rolling between.
We're moving the money from our general fund to the capital improvement fund, which is allowed by state law to be able to do that. So, we took a pretty good hit to our rainy day fund a few years ago, and we've been able to build that back up or at that max, which is great because there'll be another rainy day sometime. So, so that's what we have for the budget amendment. We did have one other one back at the first of the year to adjust some things, but it wasn't major either. So you just have your public hearing on that now, and then we just need a motion to approve the budget amendment.
Okay, so we have to, so I open the public hearing. So I guess I close it because there's really nobody here.
Unless,
Okay.
okay, so yeah,
The public hearing is now closed. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the amended budget.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve ordinance 2022-25, amending the fiscal year 2022 budget as proposed.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Jason Thielen, seconded by Councilman Lott. Is there any questions or discussion on the amended budget? If there are no questions or discussion, we'll move on to a roll call vote, starting from Councilman Lott.
Lon Lot, aye.
Jessica Smuin, yes.
Craig Gordon, yes.
Jason Thielen, yes.
Kelly Law, yes.
Okay, motion passes. We will move on to item E, which is the open space improvement request. We have the property.
Okay, yes.
is a property owner online, Austin.
Let me see here.
I think that's Kelly.
He is not online.
Okay.
Let me, well, I can introduce the item. So essentially, this request is a property owner. His backyard fronts open space. He wants to remove 10 to 20 sagebrush that border his property to the north. So he has some pictures here that he's included. You can see these sagebrush here. He's concerned he claims that these, by removing these, it would improve fire safety for his home, since he fronts the hillsides and the open space there. So he's requesting permission to remove those. His plan would be to use, some equipment to get in there, remove those, and then he would restore it back to a natural state. He'd reseed it, and try and get it back to as if he hadn't gone in there. So that's his request. Let me just see here if I'm missing anything. The Planning Commission did look at this. They ended up making a recommendation to deny this request based on the fact that they felt that public open space should remain undisturbed. And so that was their recommendation.
So question here, is living sagebrush a significant fire hazard? I mean, and maybe that's a maybe Chief Patton can advise us on that. I mean, is that something that people should clear out? And because I wonder, he's saying I'll replant it with native grasses, but I assume that becomes a fire hazard as well.
Yeah, if you take the sagebrush out, I mean, you notice the weeds don't grow as well around the sagebrush. If you take all the sagebrush out, the weeds are gonna grow higher. I mean, that'd be sagebrush height. Sagebrush burns. That's not significantly worse than the weeds. It actually probably burns. So
Yeah.
Mayor, I would like to recuse myself from this. I've done some work for Mike Martin for the past couple of years at his previous residence, and as well, he's asked me to work for him on this residence. In reality, he won't be going in disturbing anything other than just plucking out a few of those along that edge. I am the one that told him the proper procedure to go through, and so he respectfully has done what he's supposed to do and ask before he does anything to any open space property. But if you see the T-post on that picture, that's the edge of the property, and there will be just a few that equipment won't even need to go in on the open space. It'll just be along the edge of, can you move to another picture?
So Lon, what's going to be planted in its place?
I don't know that you need to plant anything else. The grass is growing there. If you pull the sagebrush, it's
So-
just gonna grow
But is
right there, that one.
a sagebrush any more flammable than the grass once it dries out?
I don't know that it is. I think sagebrush, very stinky and smoky. But I don't think there's one over the other dry that would be more flammable. He is putting sort of where that dirt is there in front of those other sagebrush is his part of his property there. He's putting a 8-foot road, meaning a gravel, so that he can maintain a barrier between him and the open space. So when I say road, that may sound a little hard, but no planting, he doesn't want anything.
Just a dead zone?
Yeah, just a buffer. He's been a firefighter before in the wildland firefighting, and he's sensitive to that. But that's my input. Yeah, of course, you're gonna have to have all 4 of you vote for it to have it even pass, because it has to be a supermajority to do anything in our open space. And it's probably not that big of a deal one way or another.
And on that note, Austin and I were looking at the code today. So there's a procedure in the open space ordinance for if someone wants to improve public open space, say they want to plant a tree on the other side of the property line in open space. The way we read the code, that particular instance has to go through planning commission and city council, but it doesn't say that it needs a supermajority vote.
All right.
So I would look at this kind of the same way. Instead of adding a tree, they want to take a piece of brush away. So I don't know that it's not a big deal either way, but I don't think, in my opinion, that it would, and I didn't talk to Ira about this, and Craig's on vacation. I don't think it would require the supermajority vote in this case. We're not building a parking lot. We're not making a major substantial change to open space. The discussion came up because we thought we had the potential of maybe only having 3 council members here, and so we were trying to decide if it could even be on tonight. So.
So is there a consideration with this, if does anyone that lives on open space, like along the mountainside, need to have the same potential opportunity or right to go remove brush to expand their fire defensible space. Because it seems like his neighbor might be in the same situation.
I just don't know if I understand the fire defensible portion of it. I don't know if that's really, like I said, right now, if you go by it, because I just rode by it the last several mornings, just kind of trying to get a better idea of what this would look like and why. It's totally brown and dry, right? That surrounding grass, I would think would be so much more flammable than just the sagebrush. I think it's just a question of, he wants modification. Is there different, is that truly the only reason is?
Yeah, yeah,
Fire.
Mike is very particular as far as wants to do things the right way and in the right steps. And he talked about fighting fires as far as cutting a certain distance of defensible space with certain things. Now, that being said, he'll just have to deal with what he's got if those 20 sagebrush aren't yanked out. So I don't know.
So,
Carla.
okay, so I guess I'm just having a hard time trying to visual. So I saw, that he had all that dirt. And then there's the sagebrush behind it. He wants to rip those out. But if you don't put anything there or have kind of that, dead vegetation area, it's still gonna be a fire hazard. The area doesn't increase because it's just gonna be overgrown by that
Yeah,
grass.
that's a good picture, Austin. Move in on.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's two questions. One, is this actually safer for a fire? Two, is this necessary for a fire? And then I think the third thing is, if it applies to this house, it may apply to many others and similarly.
So what about the area to the side,
This side.
on the north side?
Yeah, that's a hill going down.
Right, yeah, no, it's a
So
gully.
He
Just worried about it coming down
Yeah.
from above.
more than likely, those scrub oak right along the property line, he will trim back in order to give him that much more defensible space on that side, but he can't do anything. It's a real steep hill right there.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. I've actually gone up that gully.
Mhm.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
Hey, this is Kelly. It might be an opportunity to maybe improve that area a little bit, maybe, but I don't know about native grasses, but I don't know if there's something that's even more drought resistant than sage they could replace the sage with if they wanted to, but that's just a suggestion. Other than that, I'm not sure what
One other thing.
ripping it out is going to do.
One other thing, Mayor, that you see that road that's down there? He's concerned, he's always seeing four-wheelers and stuff going up and Jeeps and stuff and things going up that road, which they're not supposed to be. And obviously no one's built in that lot yet, so it's still an open area for people to run. But trail, I don't know if trail can go back behind there or from the other, people use that area a lot. So when you talk about going on the trail to the north of his place, it comes across that draw there and comes back over to the south side up a little further. But as far as any kind of improvement right next to his place, the trail system wouldn't work. But he is concerned that these four-wheelers and that might be the ones starting the fire up there.
Oh, for sure. No, I agree with them on that. But that's, yeah. Any other questions? So if you recuse, okay, so I've got a question about recusal. If you're recusing yourself, are you just recusing yourself from the vote or from the discussion? That I just don't know.
Well, so from the vote, simply because I don't want to look like I'm playing a favorite on this one.
Right. I know, but I just don't know.
Because I may be the
whole-
one,
We haven't really had this before, so I was just
Yeah.
curious, how does that work?
I may be
Is
the
that-
one pulling the sagebrush out.
Brigham, do you know?
Yeah, certainly you'd be recused from voting on the matter. Now, generally what you're gonna do is ask for a motion, and when the motion's made, there's gonna be discussion. I think best practice would be at that point, when there's open discussion, that you wouldn't participate on in that.
But
Okay,
another question, but he doesn't have to recuse himself, even if this is his customer and he's doing work for them.
Yeah, I think in this instance, I would recuse because he's saying he's gonna be the actual person that
I
he
might
has a
be- well,
pecuniary,
I
he has a
might-
pecuniary interest in the work that will be done on the home. So yes.
okay, so if there's no, I'll entertain a motion.
I guess my concern is, if it makes sense on this property, it really would make sense, all along that mountainside. And I'm not sure that we want to, that we're encouraging people to go tear out all the sagebrush 20 feet back or whatever their home happens to be set back. I mean, some could be more, some could be less.
So can I make another comment though? His house sits different than most homes in there. Most homes sit forward and they have a bigger backyard that is a buffer. His home actually sits clear back to the back because of the
Okay,
grade in the
that's
front.
interesting. Do you know what his setback is on the rear right now?
It's,
You measure that, Austin?
and 20.
And what's the recommend?
But you'll see,
Station.
but you're right, there's other homes around there that have similar setbacks.
Yeah,
It's about 60 plus feet, a little over 60 feet.
So if you go down lower in the neighborhood, go down south, like even Will's home that he just moved into, that's gonna have, see all these are set back even further. I don't think
Oh,
that's
I
an
see what you're
exception.
saying.
It's all over every single one, just because the homes are so large, they're taking that entire envelope.
Mhm.
So the setback, I mean, so I think Greg has a genuine,
the other concern is, I'm just not sure that, natural grasses is gonna be safer than living sagebrush. I don't know, but it doesn't sound like it.
I guess really if it were in the name of fire mitigation, it would be like putting another 20-foot barrier down like that he's doing in the 8 feet on his property line. Honestly, that's something similar I'd like to do around mine because the grass is growing so high right up to it and it's really hard to control. But yeah, so it's up to you guys. Did you have a question?
Well, that would be my question from the fire chief. What's best practices for defensible space? Is there a distance that's been defined or is it?
I don't know that there's, depending on how tall the brush is around, there's a myriad of reasons or things. We were talking about, I believe that there is in the city code, an actual distance. I want to say it's 30 feet around the house. But I don't know that for sure. It all burns. So to say, I think it's things that don't burn would be better, but where do you draw the line?
Yeah, I'd like to look at something definable.
Yeah.
For all neighborhoods that many back to open space, what are we gonna set as that standard? Is it the property line or are we gonna create a measurement? That's best practices for safety. Maybe There's not a clear answer to that. And we don't have a code that defines that for fire boundaries.
Not on the fire side. It would be
Okay.
more in the municipal code.
There is a section somewhere in our code where it does talk about defensible space on private property, but I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't know where it is. I'd have to look it up.
So the homes that show up on this parcel map so far, even to the north, their back boundary line against open space, it's all about the same. So I know what you mean, because the house does sit further back and up higher because this is a longer lot. But you look at that cul-de-sac up above and how close they are to the,
I agree.
I don't know. I just feel like. Kelly, do you have any comment?
Sorry, looking for the mute button. No additional comment.
Okay, so anyone willing to move forward
make
with
a
the
motion.
motion?
I move that the request to remove sagebrush from city open space be denied based on the following: that city open space should not be modified, and that there is not a compelling reason to expand the defensible open space by removing sagebrush and replacing with native grasses.
Okay,
I'll second that.
there's been a motion by Councilman Gordon, seconded by Councilman Thielen. Any questions or discussion on the motion? If there's no question or discussion, we'll move ahead with the roll call vote. So does he say at this point that he's recusing himself instead of voting, or do I just skip? I'm not sure of the procedure.
Yeah, he already,
Okay, so I
indicated that
just
he was, so yeah, I would
Okay,
just skip
so
him.
since Councilman Law is recusing himself, we'll start with a roll call vote from Councilwoman Schmoon.
Jessica Smuin, yes.
Greg Gordon, yes.
Jason Thielen, yes.
Kelly Law, yes.
Okay, ordinance passes. The request was denied. We will move on to item F has been postponed further to our next meeting. As we thought the budget hearing would take longer. And we know that Councilman Law and Councilman Thielen have to leave early. So we felt that it was important that everyone be here. We thought there would only be 3 for the discussion. So we're gonna move on to item G, which is the Recreation, Arts and Parks tax discussion.
So William's been working on putting information together and the details of what it takes to pass a RAP tax or have it on the ballot. And so he's got some information that he will present to the council tonight, and hopefully we have enough info to cover all your questions. So I'll turn it over to him.
All right. So just going through the information that's been provided in the packet for you. The main background of the section just stipulates what is specifically required by state code in order for a ballot question, including a RAP tax question to be put to the public. So the way this generally goes is there's a requirement for a RAP tax that the city council pass a resolution to inform the county that they want to include that on a ballot initiative. The reason that this happens is to allow the county a chance to state if they would like to impose a RAP tax or not, because there cannot be a consequent municipal RAP tax and county RAP tax together. So the nice thing is we have.
Hey, William, before you leave that one, so because multiple cities in the county have already instituted a RAP tax, Does that? You basically can say the county is not going to do it, right?
Correct. We have phenomenal odds that this will most likely be possible for us as well, because there are 13 other cities in Utah County that currently impose a RAP tax. Some have had it since 2005, some have had it since last year. But the way of this, so after the county lets us know their decision, we then inform the Lieutenant Governor's office as well as the, informing the Lieutenant Governor's office as well as providing public notice that this is something that we'd like to pursue. So just giving time for opinions to be given from both sides, and then the various steps going through that timeline to eventually potentially get it onto a ballot initiative. That required timeline is included in the packet. And so the biggest thing right now is getting that opinion back from the county commission. They have 60 days from the time of being noticed to give a response back to this. And that is the biggest part of having a large or a window of time for an action to happen. Otherwise, the majority of the rest of the process is very detailed in what needs to be done by what point. So what the RAT tax will do is just impose a 0.1% additional tax on sales and use taxes. This just means that going through anyone that is purchasing something from the city itself or within city boundaries, whatever would be getting a sales and use tax, there'll just be an additional 0.1% from this area. This sales tax would be then given to the state tax commission and then to be distributed out monthly to the different municipalities. We'll be given a 50% direct distribution for whatever is sold in our tax jurisdiction, and then additional 50% that is distributed by the state to municipalities proportional to their population. Going through and having talked with the state tax commission, as well as just some other entities, what this would look like for us in annual revenue would be just north of $100,000. And this would be specifically for recreation, arts, and parks use in the city.
William, for online sales, where does that fall? In terms of what would be the tax on that, or the benefit?
So the benefit is just the online portion as well, just gets that additional.
Is that considered local?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
that's in jurisdiction, got it.
Yeah, so the
Thanks.
jurisdiction is wherever so for online purchases, that jurisdiction is wherever the consumer would be acquiring the merchandise.
So how did they come up with that 101,000? Because we don't have that many retail type sales here. It's huh?
Online.
Well, so 101,000 is 50% of the 0.1%, right? We're increasing the rate, the tax rate from 725, right?
From 715 to 725.
Okay, from 715 to 725. And we're gonna get 50% of that 0.1.
So the 0.1% is based off of whatever additional 50% we get from direct sales. This is a wonderful 2 weeks of trying to figure out what all this meant.
It's a complicated formula, but that 101,000 number came directly from Jim Clayton, who's the head of the state tax commission for this. We don't have the ability to calculate it.
But on simply the increase.
Yeah, so Let me
No,
find
it's
the
not-
email.
It's not on the increase, it's
Yeah,
on everything. So if it's 100, based on that percentage and it's 101,000, what is the tax? What revenue is coming in that what's the high end of that revenue?
So this year, we're gonna hit probably close to 2 million in sales tax. So it would be another 100,000 on top of that. Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Well, and,
yeah.
and we're already paying it, but that money's going to other cities. So on Saturday, I shopped in Lehigh, Highland, and American Fork. So I paid for their parks and arts improvements.
Right, we're paying, we're already paying for it down there,
Mhm.
but that's not coming up here because we're buying it down there. What we're talking about right now is we're putting it on the tax that we pay for anything we buy up here. So everyone in Alpine, which really no visitors come up here to buy donuts at the junction. That's how I'm looking at is we're just saying we're gonna increase our sales tax rate so that we can collect more on the things we buy here.
Well, and there's probably more money that comes in than we realize from the junction. And I mean, it's the only time we can collect money from people that use our outdoor recreation.
Yeah,
There's
No,
a bunch
I-
of people
I-
that come
I
from all
understand.
over that buy shakes.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
buy
understand that,
shakes,
but I'm just
buy
trying
snow
to equate.
cones.
My daughter comes from Provo and gets a snow cone,
Okay,
several, every time she
Okay.
comes here.
okay.
Mayor Merrill, I apologize, I have to leave for this one.
You're
May I be
excused.
excused? Thanks.
So
Okay.
I just pulled the spreadsheet up that Jim Clayton sent to me. There's two components in here. The first is a local option point of sale. So for January 21, there was $109,781.95. And then he's got a rate of 1%. Let's see. Yeah, and that's local taxable sales. And then he's got a state food point of sale. I can send the spreadsheet out to you. But that's where the 101,000 came from. And he says, disclaimer, this analysis is based on actual local option and food sales tax distributions for calendar year 2021. It is not intended to be a forecast of future distribution because it could go up or down or whatever. But I'll have to show you sometime the summary sheet that we get when we get our monthly sales tax distribution. There's a lot of formula stuff going on there that we wouldn't have the ability to calculate. And so that's why we asked him to calculate it for us.
Okay.
So I think it's a nice idea, but we don't have an election cycle ourselves, right? So we have to fund this, and what does that look like?
Correct. So
Sorry,
an estimate from the Utah County Elections Office stated that the cost to put a ballot question in our non-election year would not exceed $7,170.
So it would only
Be-
cost
be-
us $7,170 to put it on the ballot this year.
Because we're still getting a ballot, but it's not a local thing. We're still getting a ballot for the state
For the general election.
or the general election, but.
But-
And so the cost to print this on that ballot, because it's gonna come in on that ballot, right?
That is my understanding, yes.
The cost is gonna be 7,000, because before, to have our ballots printed was over 15,000.
I think we had originally estimated that the
Smaller
cost would
ballot.
be greater. This is coming in a lot lower than
Yeah.
I had anticipated.
But
But
if we did it next year, the cost is zero?
it would be what we're gonna be paying. We
Yeah,
wouldn't probably
but no
pay any more
incremental.
for our election
Yeah.
than what we would be paying.
That's
Correct.
our
But
understanding.
we'd also miss out on
Sure,
net
this year.
Almost
$93,000.
The
Or more.
possibility. So, yeah, that,
830.
so Mayor, that doesn't sound too bad to me. I was thinking when I read that though too, that it's gonna cost us. It's like, I don't know if I wanna pay $18,000.
Totally. And it might not go through. So for me, I was looking at it where it would be in a deficit. But, you know, there were a handful of cities that put on the ballot last year. They all passed. I just wonder, you know, are we gonna miss out on that window? And I get what you're saying. I never thought of it that way, is that we're imposing a tax on our own residents. But I think you'd be surprised how many people come in just for, whether it's the mountain bike people coming in, you know, bringing their kids, filling up with gas on the way out, or just grabbing a drink on the way out. It's just those little things. I don't think it's all Alpine residents. But I look at like these amazing projects these other cities have been able to do with the wrap tax, and what they've been able to do with it is, you know, if anything, it would help us maintain our parks. You know, that's a funding source that I would think would pay for maintenance year to year. Or put towards a new project, or, you know, anything like that.
It's a consumption tax, which is in a sense less, I mean, we're raising taxes likely anyway, right? So in a sense, it's less regressive than a property tax. But yeah, last year, so I talked to a city council member in Lehigh last week, and he reminded me that they passed this last year, and maybe it was just a good year for it, but they had ran it before and it didn't pass there. So, you know, I don't know if it's just kind of where the economy is at the time. But, you know, I mean, they're grateful to have it to do, you know, certain, you know, key projects with, but you know, I think there's one concern might be that, you know, if we have to raise taxes and we add this as well in the same year, I don't know how that sounds or feels to the voters, right, who have to pass this.
What I hear from our residents is we love our trails and open space. Can we please maintain them? And I have to say, we don't have a funding vehicle. You know, it's our outdoor recreation. And am I wrong in my understanding that I'm paying for everybody for American Fork, Lehigh's, and Highlands Trails and Park System? Because I do most of my shopping there. So I'm paying it and not benefiting in my own community.
Yep. William, do you want to get into if a city implements this, that you have to specify what it will be used for? Some of went broad, some of went narrow, and you want to touch on that?
Yeah. So from talking to other cities, especially Highland, who just implemented this tax last year, one of the requirements in proposing ballot language is specifying the entity that would be imposing the tax, the rate of the tax, and then what the distribution of funds would be for. Highland decided to make it very specific to specifically their parks. So that means that they weren't allowed to use it for cultural activities. They weren't allowed to use it for the arts, or in some cases, even their trails. So they just kept it to, you know, what is determined as a park itself. So that is something just additionally that needs to be considered when deciding what this would be used for and what kind of distributions can be used from it. What some cities such as Orem and Spanish Fork have opened that up to as well is using this as a fund for additional grants for local nonprofits or other entities that want to make improvements to the city, but they just don't have their own funding. So this is also able to be used in those types of grants as a possibility of what all this can be open for.
How come some cities rebranded it as park? I saw that. Was that just the way they wanted?
It's mainly just the acronym itself. So RAP can be for recreation, arts and parks. Orem, theirs is CARE, which is cultural arts and recreation enrichment. Is whatever you want the catchiest alphabet soup to
So
be.
can we do that too? Can we say
Yes.
we want to have it park?
That is
or-
correct, yes.
okay. Okay,
Kelly, do you have any questions?
Sign off.
He might be on his
He's
flight,
muted.
but I still see a signal there for him.
Maybe he's still muted.
Maybe they're
Kelly,
You're
you're still
taking off.
muted.
You know, I'm just concerned this won't pass this year. I think I think we, you know, people are gonna look at this by this fall. There's inflation, heavy pressures, right? The economy is maybe slowing. We passed a 37% tax increase, and then they're asked to approve this thing, and they might just say it's enough. I don't know. It might pass, but I don't know.
do you think it's higher probability to just put it on the next, because every year, so it's been going since 2005. When you start to add those numbers up, that's a big miss for our community.
It's a lot of money that we are missing out on, the opportunities that it would provide for our city. I worry, like, if we put it off for another year, same reason that you worry about it this year, is that I don't see our economy booming in the next several years. I see it going the other way. I don't know if we don't, let's say we try it now, it doesn't go, but even next year, I don't see the probability going up anymore. Do you agree?
No, probably, I mean, probably not, but it would be, but I assume we don't raise taxes again next year. I mean, it might separate it out, and it would put it, I don't know, is it better to have it during an election? I mean, is it simpler, easier? I don't know. Oh, and sure enough, lots of cities run this repeated, right, until they get it, but.
I mean, I don't know. Is there a city that's run it more than twice? I think most of them, there aren't that many where, most of them have passed the first time through.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, American Fork has already made a video that we can just kind of link. to.
For
Well,
their
and
rap
that
tax.
said,
Yes,
does this need promotion, right? Because when you
Yeah.
go to these
I
other
think people
cities,
need to
there's signs
understand.
like all over, and then,
Yeah.
there's some opposition sometimes
I
too.
think, there's definitely needs to be education, so people understand.
Does the city do that? Does the city promote it?
Yes, and like I said, I would
Okay.
strongly, I think this is what Highland did also. They actually went off of, well,
This is what you're thinking.
see, American Fork, I think, sent out mailers, and Highland benefited because it sent it out to most of Highland City, because they share a zip code for a large part of their cities. So they got the mailer, understood, and then they referenced their video also. So it helped Highland last year.
Yes, and throughout the process, there will be specific deadlines and dates for petitioning citizens for language and opinions on the subject. There is a requirement that at least 3 weeks before the election, there is some kind of mailer or informational pamphlet to be distributed to the voting population in the city. So,
And that would be our responsibility
dime,
then,
yes.
on our
Correct.
dime. Uh-huh.
No, that's what I was saying, that Highland benefited because AF did it for them.
Uh-huh. Well, Mayor, I was just curious as to what some of these other cities' total sales tax is. And I had, yeah, I had Shane look this chart up. Because when I buy sprinkler parts from the supply place in same company, Sprinkler Supply in Orem, I pay Orem's tax. When I buy it from Lehigh, I pay Lehigh's tax. And when I buy them from South Jordan, I try not to buy it from South Jordan because they're even higher than down here from the same supplier, right? So I was just curious as to the total tax. Alpine right now is like, say, 715, and Highland is 725 right now. Also, so if we buy in Highland, like Jessica, we're talking about going out, and that's why we did that leakage study 8 years ago, is to see where our money is going, see if we could keep any in town, right? But Cedar Hills, where's Cedar Hills down the bottom? They're 725 also.
So that's all with, because they have the wrap tax.
Okay, so, and that's the total. Here's the other interesting thing. We're only that's highway tax. That's all these other taxes that make that combined total. We're really only talking about the sales tax, 4.85. 4.85%. So that is, I'm just trying to get in my own mind when we talk about 0.1%, getting $100,000 from that. See if the math was working in my mind anyway. Sorry, but that's. Yeah, there's the 10th. Okay. Yeah,
So William,
a lot of cities have it. Correct. A lot of cities have it.
and yeah, that was just my feeling, is I'm paying it and we're not benefiting.
Yeah, I hear you.
So,
And so in reality then, Jessica, how much do I really even buy in Alpine? Because I seldom go to the junction because I don't drink soda pop and I don't need a soda pop and I don't eat donuts. So I don't go buy a donut and so it doesn't even affect me in essence. I don't even.
and kind of back to Shane's comment that residents say, or did you make that comment? If there's a value in this increase, we support that. Is there going to be
You get something
a
for
gain?
it.
Yeah, it's when there's no benefit.
Well, and again, there's a proportionate from the county. There's a proportionate amount is returned to the city. Is that right?
Correct.
Of the county. So essentially today when we shop at American Fork, it doesn't go there. But if we pass this, then some of that does. It comes back, right? Because it's proportionate on the cities.
Yeah, based on
Exactly.
population.
But if
So
we
the
don't
other
pass it, we
50%.
don't get our proportionate.
Right, we get sales tax based on population
Right.
from other communities
But we
based
don't
on
get the-
population.
But we're not getting the wrap tax portion of it.
Correct.
So it's not just, Alpine residents getting taxed more to collect that money or to get the $100,000. That's all the other cities that have imposed this wrap tax. 50% of what they're getting is getting redistributed
Yeah.
within. So that's where you're also getting the other monies. That's why the numbers aren't quite fitting, because I understand what you're saying when you're like, wait, it's only 0.1%.
Mhm.
That's not making, but that's where
That's-
the monies are coming from.
So
That
Gotcha.
there's so much more out there than what our
It's
little community is doing.
Gotcha.
it's online and then the proportion.
And then the rest of the community as a whole, or the county and the state. So does it just redistribute within the county, or is it throughout the entire state, the wrap tax, the 50%, the other 50%? That doesn't, outside the origination source.
So the 50% that's getting distributed based on population is getting distributed throughout the whole state.
Okay, so that's,
Mm.
so really, we're missing out on a lot by not doing it. We're not really punishing ourselves. If you're saying, you're not doing the donut, you're not doing the soda, but you're still paying it everywhere you
Yeah, I
go.
go
When you
every-
buy your
yeah.
parts, you're paying
Yeah.
it, but Alpine City's not receiving any of it because we haven't passed it.
It'd be interesting to know.
Yeah,
how much-
Mayor, this is a no-brainer to me. I mean, no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, didn't you have a graph that kind of showed, the other cities and
For sales tax itself, no, I had one that,
For the wrap tax.
correct.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So then a question on the promotion end of things, what costs are we gonna incur? Maybe a couple thousand on printing and mailing, or more than a couple thousand?
Probably something, I'm trying to think what our news line costs us. What would you remember, Heidi? It's in the 1,500 or 1,000 neighborhood, so not a huge expense.
So would we have to do a separate mailer, or can we include it in our mailer? In our news line?
So all that's required is that this is posted in 3 separate locations. So generally in wherever public meetings are advertised, whatever you have to distribute to the generally, and then just a informational pamphlet.
Right, so I'm wondering, since we're already paying for our news line to be put out every month, can we put that in the news line saying, hey, this is what the wrap tax is? Or does it have to be a separate mailer, an informational mailer? Can it be rolled in?
I'm glad I.
Because
pulled
really
this up a
then the
second ago.
additional
Sounds
cost
like it
is
could.
incremental, it's very
Yeah.
little, right?
Mhm.
That's probably how I would do it, is put it in that maybe October mailer.
And then we'll have the website ready by then, huh?
We will have them, and it could be,
Website ready by then, and you can,
could get that
and it's just gonna
information.
tell everybody just what they need to know, right?
It's looking good.
It's getting there.
Okay.
If it were to, if the city decided to go for it this year, timeline wise, am I remembering right that they have to pass a resolution? Would the July meeting, we only have one meeting in July on the calendar, would that meeting be too late?
So the difficult thing with, if we put it in the July meeting, was that it extends the 60 days for the county commission to get back to us on their decision. From previous cities that I've talked to and seen, it's taken them roughly a month just to get that response back. And so unless we were able to keep it within a month, it would be much more difficult if we did it in July.
But we have a sample resolution in the packet, right?
Correct.
So I think if you wanted to, Hiram can correct me if I'm wrong, that we could pass a resolution that's essentially in the form of the resolution included in the packet. We could make minor modifications to it if you wanted to go for it this year. You see the problem with that, Hiram?
So do we want to, I know, Solon, would you want to move forward with it this year?
Yeah, we're talking about $10,000 cost is what we're talking then. It's nice to put it to the vote of the people, yeah.
How about you, Greg?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so should we,
give them the
The
chance.
option. So do we want to? Do we need to make a motion on the resolution then?
Well, obviously,
Yes.
to make a resolution, we need to,
I'm looking for it right now.
I've got it. Are you ready?
Oh, okay, you're ready.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number R 2022 20.
Should be 31.
-31 to notify Utah County Commission of our intent to submit an opinion question to Alpine residents regarding whether Alpine should impose a citywide tax to fund cultural, recreational, and other zoological facilities.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned by Councilman Mott, seconded by Councilwoman Schmuen. Is there any questions or discussion?
Is this where we
It's
would
a
say,
Wrap, not a
let's
zap.
rename it to park? I mean, I don't know
I
if you
think we
guys
can
have a
modify that.
preference for that.
So it is an option up until the time we put it out as language to the Lieutenant Governor's office.
And when
Okay,
is that?
That is the end of August.
Okay,
should be the
so you don't have to do that
23rd.
now.
Yeah,
Right
right.
now,
But,
we just have to say that we're gonna do this. It's
To
our
the ca- to the
declaration of
county.
intent.
but I
Okay.
think, yeah, and that might be a better name, but I think when you present it, it's like better to be broad, and that also gives the city some latitude to use it in a variety of good
Part as
purposes.
the acronym, so it
Oh,
still
yeah.
is arts, it's still
just making sure that the
Yeah.
acronym,
fits.
I'm not sure we should talk to Highland and Leeheim why they
Yeah,
decided to go
rap
with
is
that.
not our best one, yeah.
And since I already have the video. Like I said, if we don't have to recreate
Yeah.
anything. Okay, so if there's no questions or discussion, let's do a roll call vote, starting from Councilman Mott.
Yes.
Jessica Smuin, yes.
Greg Gordon, yes.
Kelly?
Kelly Law, yes.
Okay, the resolution passes. Okay, where are we at? Okay, item H, shooting galleries. That's that one.
All right, so I'll go ahead and introduce this. So shooting galleries. Here in Alpine City, we have had a history of, we've allowed some shooting galleries in private residences. So these would be where we've seen these located is underground, kind of under like a garage type area. So it's all cement walls, cement ceiling. And they put these in there. However, our code doesn't really specifically, call this out or address it. We've just kind of interpreted it that way. And so we thought it'd be a good idea to have our code be more specific and specifically allow these in a certain setting. So you'll see that this is affecting, so we have it listed as 3 different ordinances. The reason for that is because it's making changes to it would make changes to the municipal code, the development code, and the police code. So in the police code, it states that you cannot shoot a firearm within the city limits. However, there is a section for exceptions. And so we would just propose, so it's being proposed that shooting galleries be an exception, so that you could shoot a firearm within a shooting gallery. Shooting gallery is just another term for shooting range, essentially. And then in the municipal code, it would outline the criteria of the shooting gallery. So, how it has to be built, what materials it has to be built out of. That's what I'm pulling up here on the screen. So it talks about having a license required. You'd have to get a license. Talks about the targets and safety precautions and conduct regulations. So this code, this isn't just something that we made up. We actually got this code is coming from the city of Holiday. They already have an ordinance like this. And so we've kind of borrowed that language from Holiday. They did have a section that talks about fees, and they talk about commercial shooting ranges. And so that's not something that we felt like really fit within Alpine. So that section was removed. But it does, again, it does talk about in here, how the shooting gallery shall. So let's see here. I'll just read. Okay, so all shooting galleries shall be located in a facility completely underground with walls and ceiling of steel, concrete, or other materials sufficiently thick to prevent any bullet or arrow from piercing it, and so arranged that there will be no danger from ricocheting or deflected pieces of a bullet. Also, targets shall be placed before a backstop of steel and other materials sufficiently thick to prevent any bullet or arrow from piercing it. So the idea is by having it underground, it reduces, it's safer, but also it helps with the noise. So another concern about shooting galleries is the noise that they produce. And so the idea was, if we're gonna allow these and they're underground, the ground is a natural sound buffer. And so anyways, those are the main changes. And then in the development code, it just goes on to just basically say, these shall be permitted conditionally by the planning commission. So anybody that wanted to have one of these, the idea would be that they'd have to apply for a conditional permit. They'd have to go before the planning commission. Plans would be submitted. They'd get a permit for it. And then it would be approved if there were no concerns and it met all of the criteria.
And so in sub-point 4 there, it says they shall not make or cause to be made any loud noise. In a shooting gallery. So is that meant to be understood that if you were to hear it outside of the premises, that it's therefore a loud noise, right? I mean, if you
Yeah, I
can't
mean,
hear it, then
obviously-
you don't, then it didn't happen.
Would you,
I just had to laugh at that one.
would you add something like to not violate noise ordinance or?
Well, we don't really have a noise ordinance.
Okay.
I thought you were working on one.
We're working on, but we
Okay.
don't currently have a noise ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, and that language there is copy and pasted straight from Holiday. So as far as what the interpretation of that language means,
I wonder if you put outside facility or something,
yeah. I think it
any
probably,
unnecessary noise,
That could be a-
outside facility,
Chief, have
shooting,
you looked at this?
shooting gallery.
Are you talking to this one or this one?
No, you. 'Cause you're the-
Brian or which Brian?
Chief Brian.
Chief
Brian.
Brian.
I did breeze through it when I saw the agenda come out. I don't have any issue with it. It's the noises that's going to be the biggest complaint if noises are heard outside of that particular area. So if you want to address the noise ordinance in some way, then that would be my recommendation. I thought we were doing this, we could put a firing range in the basement of the fire station, but I guess not.
Yeah, that's why we're doing it.
Okay, well, I thought we were making the change.
So have you had very many issues around Highland or Alpine?
I have, in my 28 years, I had no complaints from a shooting gallery or shooting range.
And we have several, not a
Other,
lot.
that are that are underneath the ground. Now, obviously, we know what happens above Lambert Park, but that's a different,
Right.
that's a different, I just wanted to clarify that. We haven't had any complaints from
So
personal shooting ranges.
Austin, have you spoken with Highland at all? How they've addressed above ground shooting ranges?
How Highlands addressed
No,
above
I'm sorry,
ground
not
shooting
Highland.
ranges.
Holiday.
Holiday, yes.
So that underground section, I did add that in there. So
Okay, so it all-
I
okay.
edited that language and added the underground. I thought that would be a good thing because as I did some research on it. And there was a website that I looked that talked about opening your own shooting gallery and it talked about noise and it said if you build a shooting gallery underground, it reduces almost all the noise. So
Okay. thank
I
you.
thought, let's throw that in there.
Is it part of the inspection process on new construction? Is it something Sunrise would look at, or is it just they
It
build
would
to this
be-
criteria and it takes care of itself?
So I know that the ones that we've had in the past, Sunrise have had noticed them and
Okay,
kind of raised a red flag and said, hey, are you guys aware that they're building this shooting range? And they brought it to our attention. And so then we talked to our city attorney, it was David Church at the time. And we brought that issue up and then he talked, we felt like there was some room in the ordinance to allow it within a home, but
And more recently, we had a request for an above ground shooting
Okay.
range
mm,
that we didn't feel super comfortable with. And I think that's what kind of spawned this, right?
yeah, that was really the spark that kind of got us even thinking about an ordinance. He was like, I want to build one above ground. And we're like, that just makes
Okay.
us concerned. Like, is he shooting handguns in there? Is he shooting high powered rifles? Is that going to go through wall? All sorts of red flags start popping up when you start thinking about all the possibilities of that. So,
And there'd logically be windows.
mhm. And then the noise thing, how do you contain the noise in there and all that kind of stuff? It's just a concern.
So Sunrise identifies them, so we know where they are when Sunrise.
Yeah,
brings
so
you the-
Sunrise does,
Okay.
will go, they have different phases where they'll go through a home and do inspections. And so when they're doing their inspections, they'll be able to identify these.
Okay,
And we've had several that are up front that come and talk to us before, even for an underground. So just,
Yeah, most of them haven't kept it like a secret or anything from us. It's been like right on their plans, shooting gallery, yeah, so.
So in point in that, regarding the loud noise, should we say emanating from the facility? I mean, would that,
right,
be
or
more
extending beyond property boundaries, something a little,
yeah, something like that.
I like the word emanating. Is that legally?
findable.
Yeah, I mean, it can be emanating, you could have, shall not make or cause to be made any louder or unnecessary noise that can be heard outside the facility. You could put language in that way, emanating from the building would be fine. Heard outside the premise.
I like premise.
Premise.
Emanating outside the premise.
Hey, Mayor, I'll make a motion.
Okay,
Make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2022-17 with the exception or the addition to 9.17.040 conduct regulations to include following unnecessary noise that can be heard outside premise.
Herm, does that work? Okay, is there
Yeah,
a
that's great.
second?
Yeah,
Oh, is there more or,
I have a question.
okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilman Lott, second by Councilman Gordon. Are there any questions or discussion?
Yeah, so Austin, would we need to correct in those other three? Because I actually should make a motion to adopt the other three as well, or the other two. I didn't.
Yeah,
I do need to
yeah.
correct or continue that motion, Mayor.
Okay.
I do need to take in consideration those other two. So do we need to make corrections in the other two? I didn't.
The other two, we can pull them up if you want to look at
Yeah,
those.
let's make sure. So we do this once.
Okay, so this is what you would see.
Does it have anything to do with noise in the other ones?
This is what would be in the development code, so it just basically says shooting galleries are subject to, and then it refers to the
Okay.
municipal code,
Okay,
which is what we were just looking at, and then
same there.
that's the same thing here. Let me get to the police code. Bear with me. Okay, here we go. This would be in the police code. So this this sentence would be added there. It says shooting galleries shall likewise be accepted from, and then it refers to the police code, which says shooting of a firearm or is prohibited within the city limits.
Okay. And then in addition to the motion I've made, that we approve ordinance 2022-18 and 2022-23.
Are those the right numbers? Okay. And Greg,
I'll second.
you're okay with that? Okay. Any further discussion?
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Yes.
Yeah. So Austin or whoever might know this, does this all include like a minimum specification for if I was gonna put a shooting gallery or a shooting range in my basement or whatever? Like, you gotta have concrete walls this thick, you've gotta have this type of door on it, et cetera, et cetera.
It outlines that it has to have concrete walls, concrete or steel ceiling, and then as far as the door, I don't know if it doesn't specifically call out the type of door that you would have to have in such a facility.
But it does somewhat allude to it, right? It arranged that there's no danger from ricocheting or deflected pieces of bullet.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, so basically it's saying, it pretty much alludes that the entire room with wherein it's taking place is a environment that's, you know, has that in mind for ricocheting bullets and that kind of thing.
Okay, and who, yeah, back to the other question, I think Lon or Greg asked, like who's responsible for verifying that they had built such a facility? And what happens if they haven't?
Yeah, so it's approved by the planning commission. It's a conditional use. And so anytime one of these is identified or, you know, someone approaches the city with an application to wanting to do this, they would have to go through that process through the planning commission to get approved. And
Okay, and we're gonna somehow educate the planning commission on what they need to look for in this type of thing. And then the inspector's gonna know what the planning commission approved and inspect on that basis. Like, do we have all that in there? Do we need to have all that in there? How does that work?
it's implied, I mean, it's kind of implied that when the planning commission approves something, it would be similar to like when a development gets approved, the planning commission may attach terms and conditions onto that. You know, staff would verify those things. You know, if there were concerns about a particular shooting range and they identified certain conditions, staff would be aware of that. I'd highlight those in a planning commission setting, and then we would make sure our building inspector is aware of that. But that, again, that's all kind of implied. We don't outline that entire process word for word inside the code here, but that is just
okay.
how we do.
Okay.
things.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not in the best location, so sorry if I'm repeating or asking things that are kind of silly. But did I hear you right saying that there's an ordinance, right, to not discharge a firearm in the city limits?
Yes, that's correct.
And did you also say that people have already built shooting galleries in their homes in Alpine?
That's correct.
And are they discharging firearms in those shooting galleries inside of Alpine?
As far as I'm aware, they are.
But there's an exclusion.
And why have they been cited for their violation of that city code?
So
and told to
again,
stop?
so just to give some background history, we when these shooting galleries were identified, we brought this to the attention of our previous city attorney. And he felt like because it's occurring within the home itself, the way that he interpreted our code is that it was okay as long as it's within the walls of their private property. But within
Is that crazy?
The home.
Does that sound crazy to anyone else? That sounds insane. I'm gonna go in my backyard tonight and pop off some rounds out of my.
Well, the
you're
backyard is
outdoors.
different, I guess, than inside, but Hiram, maybe you want to speak to that because there's a different set
Well,
of.
it's my
laws within
property.
Primary home.
We ought to
Yeah.
have Chief Williams speak to that.
Yeah,
Inside the city limits. Inside the city limits is inside the city limits.
There'll be a police officer sitting outside your door
Like,
tonight.
so like, no, but I'm like, hear me out on this. So my property or inside my home or inside my basement is somehow not in Alpine city limits?
That is how it was previously interpreted. I can
Okay.
only tell you that.
So
that's
what
how
other
we-
Alpine laws do not apply when I'm in my home?
do
Hiram?
you want to?
You know what I mean? Like,
There's a set
Address
of,
that.
this is case.
how
law,
would an
right?
attorney come up with that type of interpretation? I'm just trying to understand what kind of attorney type of representation we've had in the past. Like,
Well, I'm not.
so what other Alpine ordinances can I violate when I'm inside my home?
So,
Who's our city attorney tonight?
Councilmember Lott, this is Hiram Bosterman. I'm
Yeah.
the city attorney here. I wasn't the city attorney before that was interpreting this provision, but there are a number of things that, I mean, there could be certain ordinances within Alpine that potentially could violate some sort of constitutional right. But I mean, I haven't reviewed the police code here in the city carefully. But yeah, I tend to agree that and I like what Austin's done here is I do believe that the best practice here is to amend that police code to make that clear, where it was otherwise not clear whether you could shoot within your home. And in fact, you would probably, you know, it seems like potentially the better reading of that is to say that you would be limited to firing within your home. If you do look at the police code, and I don't know if you're able to see that, but the provision that we're not amending said you are allowed to shoot, right? Obviously, officers are allowed to shoot. That's one of the exceptions. And the second is when you're defending your life. I didn't see all the language, but it's something to that effect. So that was already built in, but there wasn't any provision in there that expressly exempt these indoor shooting ranges within the home. And it's probably best practice to put a provision in there that does do that, just in case anybody tried to raise that with the city.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to understand where we're at as a city and what we.
Yeah,
I've just been
Kelly,
like lately bugged by people just skating by on stuff when just because it's like somebody's says, oh yeah, no, that's okay. Like, let's just do things right is all I'm saying. And I have another question. So does it violate the Second Amendment to say you can't shoot a gun inside of Alpine city limits, except for in those, obviously self-defense or the police or, some other, important exception?
Not at this time, I'm not really prepared to opine on whether it would violate the Second Amendment or not. I don't know. I haven't looked at the case law on whether you are allowed to just openly fire within your home or not. On that, certainly you have a right to bear arms, but yeah, I'm happy to look into it if the council wants a better legal opinion on whether there's some restriction for the Constitution or whether the Constitution prohibits the city from banning indoor firing ranges. But yeah, here with this, I think, yeah, best practice again would be to amend the police code to allow that, just so it's on the record and it's clear.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add that staff, we were concerned that our ordinance wasn't adequate. And so that's why we're proposing that we adopt some ordinance so that we have something clear that we can enforce and that outlines guidelines.
Are there any other further questions? Kelly, were all your concerns addressed? I mean, not wholly, right?
Oh, I think so, but no, just to be clear, so Austin, instead of adjusting the ordinance to just say, yeah, you can't shoot a gun inside the city limits, and excluding the exceptions, that includes inside your home. We're going completely the other direction and saying, okay, now you can shoot a gun inside the Alpine city limits, and it has to be inside your home in a city-approved shooting gallery.
Correct. Yeah. We're saying that is a permissible place to discharge a firearm.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I think I'm done, Mayor.
Any other questions? With no further questions or discussion, we're ready to move on to a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Lott.
Lon Lot, yes.
Jessica Smuin, yes.
Greg Gordon, yes.
Kelly Lawn, no.
Okay. The ordinance passes. We'll move on to item I, ordinance regarding public notice.
Okay, so this is an ordinance, some amendments that are being proposed. In recent city council and planning commission meetings, we've held some public hearings, and we've received some complaints from the public that they didn't feel like they were noticed properly, even though the city followed our ordinances with regards to public noticing, and we followed the state requirements. And so this is an attempt to kind of go beyond what our current requirements are and have some extra ways of noticing individuals. So the types of situations that we're proposing that we improve the way that we notice would be changes to open space, annexations. Anytime a boundary line adjustment would change the use or zoning of a property. A plat amendment that would change the use or zoning of a property. And then the acquisition or vacation of public right-of-way. So in any of those instances, we would propose that there be a requirement that those that are affected, within 500 feet of those changes would receive a written letter in the mail. And also that there would be a sign posted on the property notifying everyone of, whether it's a change of use, a change of zone, or, maybe new pickleball courts at the park. There'd be a sign to notify passerby. And so rather than putting this code in each section of our development code, we just decided to create a new section that's simply called public noticing. And so each section would just state, this shall be noticed as per the public noticing section of our development code.
And a public right of way is any road as well.
That would be any
inclusive,
road in the city, correct?
or other trail, et cetera. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, there are places where, our right of way extends beyond what you would consider like the paved road. And so those would also be included. You'll see here on your screen, section 2.04.020, that would be where we address the written notification. It's something that would be, let's see here, at least 14 days prior to the public hearing. The applicant would have to submit to the city a list of the property owners within 500 feet and provide us with stamped envelopes. And then staff would send out the letter within 10 days and staff would draft the letter.
Yeah, so Austin, in this section, like if the city is making a change to a park, who's providing the city with stamped envelopes? The city provides itself?
The city would, we would essentially be the petitioner in that situation, so we would have to provide the envelopes.
Okay, so this language is fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it says, the written notification, it starts off, the first paragraph says 14 days prior to the public hearing by the public planning commission. And then you go down to the second paragraph and then it says at least 10 days prior to the public hearing held by planning commission. City staff will mail
the letters. Yeah, so basically it gives us 4 days to prepare to draft a letter and then mail
But
that
it
out.
has to be mailed, okay.
Yeah.
I just was reading it one and the same, okay.
So what does this mean on open space? If we add a bench to a park, do we have to notify everyone? I mean, is it?
That kind of goes back to like our sagebrush issue tonight, right? What is considered a material change to open space? Is planting a tree, removing sagebrush, is a park bench, is a pickleball court, where do we draw the line? I mean, it comes down to what our definition of a material change is.
A dollar amount?
That's what I was just thinking.
What if a dollar amount that we would have to pay, or that maybe someone coming in
Just the cost of the project, whatever the chief would,
The
the cost of the
The
project,
improvement
except
cost, a bench is
Whether we're paying for it or
In
or the
open space,
submitter is paying for it.
so like 10K or something.
So we wouldn't want to go too low in my mind, because let's say Creekside Park, we've got 10 trees we need to replace.
Mhm.
We wouldn't want to have to do a public notice to replace those trees at a cost of 20 grand or whatever it is.
How
So
much
I-
is a pavilion?
Well, I think we put in the budget 50 with materials and labor, so. Maybe it's. I don't know what the number is, 30,000. We were pretty cheap, though. We could maybe build a parking lot for less than that. You never know. So that is a good point. There is the section in the, that's the one you got.
Is this the one you're thinking of?
Yeah. Mhm.
And that does call out parking lots regardless of dollar amount.
Just refer back to this. At some point, there will be some gray area, but it's hard to write something that covers every single situation. If there ends up being a question, it would just come here. Or we would notice it, I guess.
so basically the benchmark would be whether there's a material change that will change the defining characteristic of the park.
Mhm.
I think that's okay. And that would circumvent, what if there's a really elaborate bench that costs more than $50,000 because there's rubies on it? I don't know. Do
Or
we
you
need to
plant
notice?
trees.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or a statue or,
Any number, yeah,
whatever.
that could run over that. So yeah, but putting a statue wouldn't materially change the
Right.
characteristic of it.
But, in the case of Healy Park, it would trigger that notice. We had a park that didn't have a playground, didn't have a pavilion. To me, that's a material change that would trigger that notice.
Okay,
So,
sounds good.
You could also say it didn't because it was a recreation park.
yeah.
That one's,
Yeah, because it's not a natural park.
it's not our, it's not a, that one is. It's our learning park.
I think
for
we
sure.
tend to err on the side of that it is a change
Yeah.
more often than not if there's a doubt, I guess.
Yeah, this is trying to notice everybody.
Mhm.
We're trying to make sure everybody knows about this. Everybody who's impacted by it.
So if there's no other suggestions or questions, I will entertain a
Yeah, just
motion.
one other thing, the written notification shall be required only for the first public hearing. I didn't hear any comment from the planning commission on that. Is that good enough? You think?
That's what we do for everything, right?
That's how we've done it traditionally. So
And there's only so much we can do, I feel like what's outlined in this ordinance, everyone has access to it. They choose to ignore it, then, we can only do so much other than
Yeah.
go door to door, which is not.
Okay, that's the only question I had on it, and I'm ready.
So how would we modify that language? on
Refer to,
open space?
what was the number and bullet point you referred to specifically, Greg?
Well, I think it's
A.
already,
I'm looking for it.
I think it's already covered.
already
If you
in
look
there.
on page 3 in the packet.
Yeah.
It's got this section 3.16.040.
Mhm.
Just
Number
looked at.
2
Oh, right there.
is what we read, and
Okay.
then number 3 adds public hearing for a material change. So I think
Okay,
it's already there.
so we're good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, Mayor, I'll make a motion that we I move that ordinance 2022-20 be adopted as proposed.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Lott and seconded by Councilman Gordon. Are there any questions or discussion on this ordinance? If there is no question or comments, we will move to roll call vote, starting from Councilman Lott.
Lon Lot, yes.
Jessica Smuin, yes.
Greg Gordon, yes.
Kelly Long, yes.
Okay, we'll move on to item J, review of the Alpine Cove Emergency Connection Agreement.
Okay, I worked with Craig to prepare this draft agreement, which a copy has been given to the Alpine Cove Special Service District. This would govern our relationship with them and with regards to the emergency connection that is planned. This emergency connection and PRV was planned and discussed as part of the annexation. In the annexation agreement, it was written by the county. It states that they would give us 50,000 for a water connection, or as the city sees fit, or some language like that. It leaves some wiggle room, but the intent was for it to go for this emergency connection. It's taken a little bit to get around to that project. We have incorporated it into our water line and PRV project that was recently bid out. The cost for that came in at $86,000. We have the 50,000 from the county, so there's a difference of 36,000. The mayor and I've met separately before with some of the board of the Alpine Cove Water District 2 or 3 times. You know, they start out, they have the feeling that we should pay for everything. And my take was, we pay the 50,000 when we received, and you'd be responsible for the rest. You know, they came back and said, you're slow in getting this done. It costs more now. You should pay for it. I still feel the same way I did originally, and that's my recommendation. And I've been blunt with them on that matter. There are some benefits, I think, and we have to remember they are still residents of Alpine City, but they're served by a different water company. I think there are some benefits to the city as a whole to supply some water to the cove in an emergency situation. Their tanks aren't huge. In the event of a fire or something like that, it could be very beneficial to the city as a whole to supply water to help the firemen in fighting a fire up there. That would be totally appropriate in my mind. And in that case, I don't think we should charge them for the water. But if their sources go down and they're relying on our water to supply their residents, I think they should be charged for it. At what rate? We don't have this situation anywhere. So at what rate? We haven't determined that, but it could be a component of a rate study that's coming for our culinary water. We should have that proposal at the next city council meeting, as well as one for our sewer rates. So back in the exhibits, on exhibit C, says the city shall provide culinary water only in cases of emergency, which for purposes of this agreement means the following. In the event that all of Alpine Cove Special Service District's water sources are out of operation, whether a pump's down, a motor's down, or whatever. Second one, provide additional water resources in the event of a fire. And the third, kind of a catch-all, for other purposes when approved by the city council. In case there's something we didn't think of here. But notwithstanding the existence of an emergency as described above, the city shall have no obligation to provide culinary water services to the extent, there's 3 items, the city does not have water capacity to provide emergency water services under this agreement in accordance as is required under the rules and regulations promulgated by the Utah Division of Drinking Water. So we didn't want to have the status of our system put in jeopardy by kind of an expansion of the system that we hadn't planned for, was the thought with that one. The second, the provision of emergency water services to the subdivision materially and adversely affects the city's water system, servicing the citizens of the city already being served by the water system and for which it was designed and constructed as reasonably determined by the city. A little bit similar there to number one. And number three, water service could be limited to water for indoor use of homes. Water for irrigation purposes may not be available. So if we're in a severe drought and they're pulling all the water off they need and the residents up there are irrigating their lawns and we're telling our citizens that you can only water 1 or 2 days a week or whatever, that wouldn't be a good situation for us to be in. So that's the reason for that one. There's two other components that need to be addressed in here in my mind. One, and these have both been discussed with the Cove. One is that there would be a water valve that would normally be closed. So this wouldn't be an automatic situation where the PRV would open if the pressure drops in their system. It would only operate if we get notice from them and we determine that it fits the provisions of the agreement, then Greg or one of our operators would go and open that valve and have that operate and feed water to them. The second is that, in the event that they have some kind of an equipment failure, it's our feeling that we need to write something in here that they would have to expedite the repair of that equipment so they can just kind of drag their feet and use water from the city system.
And of course, they'd be charged for that water.
Yes, they would. And it's fine if we have the water available, but if it's, in a situation where we don't have the water available, we wanted to make sure we have that covered. So I've tried to get in touch with their board. I finally did get a call back. I think it was fairly late Friday, or I think it was Friday night, from them. They said they'd have some comments to us by today. I haven't seen anything. So the situation we're in, we've got this contract out, and the contractor needs to get materials and everything ordered. My feeling is we need to get this done and then tell the Cove, hey, we've got to get on this agreement. We've got to work through it and figure things out. So with a connection between two different public water systems, the Division of Drinking Water has to approve that connection. So we came up with the plans for the PRV and connection, submitted them. It got approved. One of the comments that they made in that approval letter was that this connection would take care of a significant deficiency. They didn't say by who had that significant deficiency.
But it's not
And
us.
that they would no longer need backup power at one of their sources. So it's obviously referring to Alpine Cove. They don't have a generator on any of their wells. So if the power went down, they would have no supply of water. And so again, my thought is they've either got to spend money on a generator or spend money on this connection. So I don't see that it should just be, that difference should be given to them.
It would actually save them money, right? The
Yeah,
cost of the
it would.
generator is much more than the difference in the cost of, the $50,000 that the county gave us. We're putting that wholly into the project. They just need to come up with the difference of the actual cost of the project, right?
Yeah.
Which then would comply to the drinking water request.
Yes. So with the significant deficiencies, once you get to a certain point, and then the state starts coming down on you and your system is no longer an approved public water system. In talking to Michael Robertson, they got some kind of an extension with the state, and they had like a year or something to get this figured out on their backup power, but he hadn't even made the connection that this would take care of that issue.
But does it though? Because this is only an emergency. Is an emergency a power failure then?
Well, I think it could be deemed
Okay.
that, yeah.
Okay.
And usually with a power failure, it's fairly short term anyway.
So now, does their board, are they aware of all of this? Is it Ron
So-
Wilkinson?
I sent this to Ron's, who called me Friday night. I sent this to Michael and I didn't have anyone else's contact information. He says that he forwarded it to them. Michael really hadn't had or not Michael, what's Wilkinson
Ron.
again? Ron hadn't had a chance to really review it, but he said he would over the
Right.
weekend.
Yeah, I guess he's also, I guess he's involved in a case right now, so he's been really slammed. That's probably why you're getting a slow response. from him. So,
So, we've awarded that contract, but I think they need it. I think we move forward, but work out something with them, even if we have some terms of payback or something, because I don't think they're real flush with money. We got them in contact with Utah County ARPA grant, hoping they would get that, and they were the first ones that we heard of that got denied. It was about a week ahead of our denial, so it seemed like a small ask, and I wish the county would have just stepped up and funded it, but and we can suggest some other grant opportunities for them too. So I guess, are there any questions on this agreement or kind of what we're trying to do here?
here, let's start with Kelly, because his flight's been delayed. Kelly, do you have any questions regarding this agreement with the Alpine Cove Water?
Oh, man. No, I mean, Shane, do you like the agreement? Do you think it's solid? Like, is it gonna work?
I can't say I don't like Craig's work. He does good work. No, I think I gave him the bullet points essentially for the agreement, and he prepared it, and then we went back and forth a couple of times. We just need to address a couple of other points here. And then I think on the cost per 1,000 gallons of water, I think we can just say as per the adopted the current version of the city's consolidated fee schedule. And then as we do our water rate study, we could determine what that is and then put it into our fee schedule.
Is there any kind of clause in there if it's, I don't want to say abused, but if they're taking too much, we can turn it off or
Well, yeah, in order for the water to even
limit
be
it
turned
somehow?
on, it's a manual process. It's not something that's gonna happen automatically from
Okay.
what you mentioned, right, Shane?
Right.
Like it has to be, let's say they have an emergency event. And, Shane mentioned that it would have to be one of our water guys physically going and opening that valve and turning it on. It's not something that happens automatically. And if it was something that was happening automatically, I would be more concerned. But where it's, we need to be aware of what that event is and then decide how to proceed forward. I think it seems like we have the latitude.
Mhm. Yeah, because it's a hydraulically operated valve. So let's say you have 100 pounds pressure on our side. Our tank is higher, so the pressure's higher. Let's say there's 100 on our side and 60 on their side. If the pressure drops below whatever the set point is, let's say it's 45 pounds pressure, this valve would open to feed pressure into their system to compensate and bring it back up to that 60 pounds. And so, again, we don't control their water restrictions. during drought years or anything like that. So we wouldn't want them drawing water off if all their residents decided they're gonna water 7 days a week and our residents are watering 3.
Gotcha.
So Shane, other than the financial aspect, how did they take the rest of the agreement?
I really haven't received any feedback because with Ron being in his trial, that's why he was getting home late and calling me after work Friday. We just don't have that feedback, but we've been very upfront with them on what we think the provisions of this agreement should be and why. So. And I don't think we need to even finalize this tonight, but I wanted to get it in front of the council and get, if you had a completely different train of thought than what we've expressed here in this agreement, we need to know that.
Well, and this is a pretty good deal for us. I mean, we wrote this deal, right? They came into us asking for another 100K, right? So this is our proposal.
Yes.
This is not,
Yep.
you know, some halfway deal. Yeah. But do you feel like there's more amendments needed before we finalize this, or?
Just those 3 items that I mentioned, the valve being in the normally closed position and city staff needing to open that for it to operate. That they need to expedite the repair of their equipment if they have a failure on a well. So it's not a long-term supply from the city. And then the suggestion on the fee, that it just be written that it's as per our consolidated fee schedule.
How is that gonna affect our water supply?
Well, the way,
It's only gonna affect that one zone, right? It's the high zone where it's coming from, right?
yeah,
But is that gonna be a significant impact on the water source?
well, that's what we've tried to write in here, that it can't be. So
I
if
know,
it is,
but-
they have to cut out outdoor irrigation or something to make sure that it's not impacting.
So how do you arbitrate that and how do you quantify that? At what point?
It's simple as a valve wrench, turn the valve off.
You can say too much.
But gallonage would be a
Yeah.
thing. We would, is there
Do
a
you know what I mean?
meter on that point? At
There
that
will
point of
be,
connection?
there will be.
There-
a meter,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, so you'd know how many houses, how much a house typically uses, and you'd know what emergency use and excess use would be.
A typical home uses about 400 gallons a day indoors for a family, you know, for a couple, it would be less. So it's not a lot of water.
Do we want to give ourselves any flexibility of adjustment on that fee? That's
Well-
after a 6 or 12-month evaluation, or?
By referencing our consolidated fee schedule, we
Mhm.
could update that schedule whenever we want, and they may not like that language because they could say, well, you can change it to whatever you want.
Mhm.
But that would also affect that would
Yeah.
affect the entire city, not just
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we might have to give a little more thought to that.
Just making sure we're protected and that the fee covers maybe some costs that we're
Or
not.
maybe
Right.
consolidated fee schedule up to a certain date or so many days, or I don't know.
Shane, what about, because in the new proposed fee schedule, you know how you have those different types in there? Like what if you created another type that was their area for that particular thing? You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
So then you could have and then you could make that type initially like mirror one of the other types, whichever one you want. And then if it gets out of hand, you just have to update that type.
Yeah, we could do something like
instead
that.
instead of updating the whole thing.
The other thing we'd want to look at too is what is their rate now? Would they be getting a better rate than they're even paying for?
That's true.
So we ought to see what their rate is and make sure that we at least match their rate. If
Yeah.
we're, if we're not sure what that fee is.
Although we'd assume their fee is higher, I guess,
I don't know anything.
because they don't have any scale. Maybe they're all volunteer labor, I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't think we have to pass this tonight, but I think the feedback is good, and then we can work with them, get their comments, because we really need their comments, so in case the council needs to hear a concern they have or whatever.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it'd be good if they took this deal. It's, with, they'll probably come back and ask for a lot more.
Yeah, we can convey to them that we reviewed this with the council, and with these additional items, it's substantially in the form that the council feels good about, and then bring it back. So.
Okay. Anything else? So we'll move on to item 7, which is staff reports.
So do we need to, we move on, we need to table that, Mayor?
Well, no, he said that he's gonna get feedback from, this was
It's
just a
discussion.
discussion item.
Oh,
So he's gonna get feedback from the Alpine Cove Water
Okay.
District, and then we'll finalize it
Got it.
after that.
thanks.
Okay. So if we can get staff reports starting from the chiefs. Chief William?
I'll be brief. I just wanted to say thank you. I know this budget season was not the funnest for everybody, especially me and Brian, as you guys beat us up and read us over the calls.
I don't feel like
I-
we beat you up.
I'm kidding. I just, I mentioned this last week in Highland, but back in December, I was speaking to my wife about the upcoming budget season. And I just told her, I said, this is gonna be one for the books, which it has been. It's not been the most easiest process, but truthfully speaking, with what we did and what we asked you guys to do, it went pretty smoothly from our perspective. There were a lot of meetings that Brian and I had with each of you. And I just wanted to stand up and say thank you for your support. We appreciate your willingness to see the need and that we had, and allow us to be able to have a communication dialogue between us and members of the council. And Shane, I appreciate your leadership in this particular process. And I just, I'm speaking for both Brian and I know he's going to stand up here in a minute, but I just wanted to say thank you very much for your leadership, Mayor, and what you did as well. And just want to say thank you. So.
Thank you, Chief.
Got a couple of things. First off, thank you. Just echo what Chief Williams said. We definitely appreciate the support. Looking at our July schedule moving forward with just the staff change, things already look better. So, which is great, because my next subject is going to be fireworks and fires. We're going to make a major push on social media to get maps out and just talk about everything. We've been putting signs out and we've started that type of stuff. But if you guys have any way of just pushing out to the residents, we're not completely banned, but let's be safe. And there's a lot of concerned citizens. We're getting a lot of feedback, especially from Alpine, asking us to just ban them, which obviously I can't ban. But I'm hoping after last year that people were very safe and we did good with the fires, and I'm hoping that we just see the same thing this year.
So I'm curious, from your perspective, at what point would it be prudent for us to just out and just do a complete ban across the city on fireworks?
I think last year was very warranted. We have better moisture this year. We haven't seen any fire bans yet from the county or the state or even the forest, whereas last year we've been a month in probably weeks banned. So we are doing better that way. But I mean, typically we just kind of go off, follow suit with the forest and the county is kind of been our guide.
Okay.
Also, just real quick follow up in the planning, right? In the planning part of, I don't know all the codes. Anyways, there is a sheet in our in the documents, in the planning code that talks about the defensible space. Essentially what it says is 30 feet of defensible space or to the property line. So, and that really only talks about what we can enforce, and it doesn't talk about going on to city property anywhere in the code that I could find. It just talks about what you have to do on your personal property or the home, the owner of the properties. So there is stuff in there, but I don't know as far as where we. So, and sagebrush, while it's not flammable, is actually pretty low flammability. Sagebrush is hard to burn. It's the grass around it that'll get it going. But typically it just kills it, but it's the grass typically that burns. So I think that's all. My wildland crew be on their way home tomorrow. They originally were headed to New Mexico. They got rerouted to Flagstaff area. They've been down in northern Arizona, southern Utah. So they'll be en route home, which is perfect. We'll get them home. We'll have all of our wildland people home for the 4th. We'll kick them again. They'll come home, be home for the 24th. Worked out perfect.
Perfect.
Right.
Great scheduling. Thank you, guys. We really appreciate you guys supporting us in all our events, and I love seeing the camaraderie between you two and your departments, and hopefully that's being reflected in the community. Thank you. Austin?
So I wanted to bring up the Montdella project. We actually have a new owner over that. I was kind of hoping that we'd have all the city council members here, but we don't. So I don't know if you want me to go over that right now, but basically the idea was there's a new property owner and they want to, and I guess I might as well just go over it. So throw it up here on the screen. So this is a rendering that was originally approved for the Montdella project. You can see the units that they're kind of 2-story, all brick, metal roofs. And so the new owner wants to build it exactly the way that it was proposed. So the same materials, same architectural design, and all of that. However, they do want to, so some of the units from the previous owner were going to be 1-story. And so they want to do all 2 stories. And so I just thought I'd run that by the city council to see if you had any issues or concerns with
Does
that.
that increase the units then? Or just
Same amount of
units?
Same footprint, just
Okay,
instead of 1-story, it's now 2
Okay.
stories.
Doesn't bother me.
Does it make any of the units more or less affordable? Not that it
Make them more affordable? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yes, it's much cheaper to build twice the square footage.
I know. I mean, yeah. I mean, building up is cheaper than building out, but yeah.
Right, do you have any issues with going from single to double?
No.
Kelly, do you have any issues going from, there were 5 units that were originally slated to be single story as opposed to 2-story. They're proposing that all 25 units are 2-story. Is that correct, Austin?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Do you have any issues with that, Kelly?
Nope.
Jessica?
No.
Grateful someone's gonna take it on.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, and
And they are anxious to get started, so.
I'm grateful they're gonna stay with kind of
Are they gonna tear
the
that one
quality
unit down?
proposed.
That's our understanding.
They communicated to us that they're aware that there's mold in it, and so they said they were gonna address that issue. They didn't say how or whether that means
Bleach.
tearing it down,
That's the wood, but they're leaving the foundation, et cetera.
but it sounds like they're gonna use the foundations that are already there.
Right.
And remind me, there's a retaining wall needed on the backside along,
Yes.
how long's that?
It's a long
Most of
retaining
it.
wall. We have a bond to guarantee the construction of it.
And how high is that?
It varies, but
Yeah,
you guys looked at that the other day.
I think at the highest points, I wanna say 8 feet, but I'm not positive.
That's
I'd
the
have to-
number that
I'd
was
have
in
to
my
check
mind
Alright,
as well.
thanks.
paperwork.
And they're not the first ones that said they bought it. These guys actually said they closed. So
Yeah.
it sounds,
Oh.
it sounds solid.
Yeah.
Really, they actually.
They closed.
Yeah.
They
That's what
actually
they said
closed on
today.
Friday, yeah.
That's
So.
awesome.
Austin, anything else?
Wow, that's
No,
awesome.
that was the only thing. They just said, we love the
Goodness.
way it looks. It makes us think of kind of Boston or, Northeast.
And
And we like that. We want to just
the,
roll
the
with
the
it.
new owner's out of state. Is that who this is?
No,
I think
in-state.
they're actually local,
Okay.
within state owner, yeah.
No. So Hiram, do you have anything?
Nothing from me.
Heidi? Shane?
Just a couple of quick project updates for those of you that maybe have not seen them. Our Westfield Road sidewalk project is complete and reports I've had, it looks great. Healy Park, we finally were able to get some concrete on Friday. So they poured the floor for the pavilion and the curb for the playground. So now we just need to get the playground installed, which they're working on getting that scheduled. And just kind of do the restoration work and it will be complete. Pickleball courts, our guys are making progress over there with the grading. And the contracts are signed. Contractors trying to have everything he can done before Alpine days. He's asking, make sure, what are the dates? I want to make sure that I plan for this and everything. So we got a good deal on some temporary fencing, and with it being right by the splash pad, we felt it was money well spent. So that should be in place now. Legacy Park, it's complete. Everything got seeded. It's looking great over there. The only thing that's not is the flower pot component of it, and we're working towards that. The cemetery, all the major vegetation is removed up on the north end. We're waiting for the retaining wall blocks to show up, and we should start seeing some grading this week. Two other things. We've got fiber into the building, but we're learning on this, and part of it is related to our poor quality through YouTube for our city council and planning commission meetings. We found that it's due to our connection speed. That's why the quality is so poor. I've, watched a couple of council meetings in Highland, and it's like in HD, it feels like. And I found out today that they have a dedicated 1 gig connection, which is about $700 a month through Centricom. There's a step down from that. I can't remember what they call it, but it's where you share a gig with some other businesses or whatever, which we don't have a lot of around here. Our IT guys believe that for probably half that cost or even a little less, that we can have that work for us.
Right,
So
'cause most businesses that would share that, they probably, because we're outside of business hours, right? So I think that would work. It's a
Yeah.
good symbiotic relationship. Because for just normal business
Mhm.
hours, I think we'd be okay with a lot less. But for high quality or HD streaming, you do need that.
yeah.
What are we on now?
Well, I did a speed test today and it was like 40 up or 40 down, 6 up.
So we're not on fiber.
No,
We're just
no,
on
we're,
cable.
they're needing to do a couple other things and then we'll be there. The other thing that we're finding out is all of the network cables that were put in the building are an old Cat 5 that the cabling guys said are probably 30. He said, we haven't used that kind of cable for 30 years. Well, this edition is like 22 years old or something, 23. So it's probably not 30, but he's going to get us a price to update those, which he said can make a difference
What's the
in your
difference in
system.
Cat
I don't
5?
know that much about it. And I haven't had a conversation yet with our IT guys, but I figure it's not costing us anything for him to give us a proposal.
Yeah,
to
it's
replace
probably Cat 5 versus Cat 5E or Cat 6 is what they'd probably
Yeah.
put in. Cat 5 is gonna max at about 100, which is probably more than sufficient. However, you could test it. Maybe when you get the
Yeah.
new one, if you have any issue, you could rewire. 6 would go up to, 500 or a gig.
Yeah, so we'll check into that, but I think we know now what needs to be done to make our system better. But we do have our new phone system in and it's operational, which is great because we had some major problems here for the last couple of weeks. So that's great. And then there's a proposal from Blue Bison. I don't know if you want to go into executive session for 5 minutes and talk about that. We only have part of a council, or if you just want to let
Is
it kind of
Kelly
sit
still
out
on?
there.
Is
What's that?
Kelly still on?
Not sure.
I am still on. I'm
Okay.
gonna be boarding here in a minute, but I'm probably not taking off for another 30 minutes.
Okay.
I wouldn't see any decisions being made, you know, Hiram's here, which is great. Craig's not, we're missing Jason. But I don't know if you want to just,
Yeah, let's do that really quick. If you can hang on, Kelly, as long as you can. But let's hurry and finish staff reports and then I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session. Mama, nothing. Jessica?
A couple of things, just, what was it? Oh, we talked about the traffic at Burgess Orchards and if there was anything we could do prior to their opening. Because they haven't applied, I don't think yet for their seasonal permit. And I don't know if you were able to get a hold of the new owner. We're just worried about that road. They're parking on both sides now. So,
It's,
Yeah,
it's,
I-
it's a
I haven't
great
been
thing,
able
but
to-
it's really dangerous.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to get a hold of him yet,
Parking lot up there.
the new owner.
have you heard any more from, it's actually the tenant that came and talked to us about doing some improvements in the
Yeah.
parking lot stuff, but
Yeah.
have you heard from him?
I believe it's Cherry Hill Farms
Yes.
and that representative. So he came and met with us probably, was it 6 months ago, I would say? And he talked about, he was concerned about the parking there. He had plans to put in a parking lot. But since that meeting, they went ahead and took out all those trees, planted new trees, but he hasn't come in with regards to a new parking lot. He hasn't talked about that. So that was his plan, but
Nice.
obviously the season's approaching here.
So can they open without a conditional use permit?
So the way that it's written in our ordinance is they have to annually, they have to renew their permit.
Okay, so if they don't renew their permit and open,
I just think we have a little bit of time here. Their opening day is July 5th. They can obviously do things very quickly. They removed a forest and planted a vineyard. So there could be some time to get
And
a little bit.
I don't
better.
think they've ever had like unpaved parking spaces. I mean, you could park on dirt if they
It wouldn't
just
need
arrange
to
it.
be paved, it just needs to
Yeah.
probably be gravel and graded because it's not business commercial. So there could be a quick remedy. So that's just kind of been on the radar.
if you could just double your efforts on getting a hold of them to do something to mitigate the safety concerns. Anything else?
I think food trucks, people are liking it. About 450 people have been coming every week, so it's been good.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. You've been working really hard on that. I think the community appreciates it. Great.
Just when the milk shed is removed, do you think we could have any synergies or efficiencies to go remove that pavilion and Burgess by Canyon Crest at the same time? Since we've already, had that in place.
So I think I mentioned on that one, and I probably should have put it on here as surplus, an item to surplus, but I think with that one, you could put it on public surplus or do something and say it has to be removed by a certain date. I'll bet you could get a little bit of money out of it.
Okay.
So why
why that
not the
one?
milk shed?
Because it's totally different construction.
The materials are
Mhm.
in more demand than the cinder
Yeah.
block and all
Okay.
the other stuff.
I mean, the trusses down there need some work and things, but I really think that somebody might pay you a little bit for it and we wouldn't have any expense in removal. You just give them 30 days or whatever to have it removed and
Yeah.
they have to take everything down to the concrete.
And is that something that you and Carolyn do then?
Mhm.
Okay.
But we'd have to declare it surplus property to do that. And I can have that on the next agenda if everybody's in agreement to get rid of that. We put a new
Okay.
pavilion in the budget. So for
Okay.
Burgess Park.
Okay, so I don't have anything right now, so I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session.
Make a motion that we.
Hey, what about me? I don't
Oh,
get to
sorry.
say anything.
Yes, Kelly, sorry about that. Did you have any?
Oh, no worries. It's my fault that I'm remote. Yes, I do have one thing that, in light of the things that, or the event, I should say events that have happened lately, especially the one in Texas, in Uvalde. I wonder if how this would work, if it's like the next city council meeting or whatever. I would love to have the police chief come in and talk about our plans and training that we have in the event that we have something like this or some similar type of event at one of our schools, and how that would be handled, who would be in charge, what training we've received, and how we would handle one of those situations. Because we've seen a lot of them not handled well, and the one in Texas was pretty horrific. I'm not saying that's ever going to happen here, but
So
I'd
Chief-
rather that we're like super prepared than not prepared.
right, so Chief, I know that they worked on it with the last project. I know Kelly wasn't here. Chief, would you be amenable to doing a short presentation next meeting?
Let me check my calendar. I know I've got some stuff coming up, but we'll work something out within the next 30 days or less.
Okay,
Does that work?
yep. Thank you. Anything
Or
else?
even if there's a written plan or something already, you want to distribute that first. And
Well, and you
then
also
let
know
everyone
that
look at
there's
it.
some things that he won't be able to share with any of us, right? Kelly,
Gotcha.
okay, anything else, Kelly?
Nope.
Okay, with that, I'll entertain a
I'll
motion.
make a motion that we go into executive session to discuss litigation.
Is there a second?
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Actually, it needs to be roll call to go
Oh.
into
Aye.
executive
Lon
session.
Lot, aye.
Jessica Smew and I.
Greg Gordon, aye.
Kelly Law, yes.